bakers. This is our bonus week for our fun activities, and we're going to be making some banana bread this week. I'm going to be choosing to make mine in muffin form, but you are welcome to do muffins or loaves depending on what supplies you have available. So let's get started. We're going to go ahead and preheat our oven to 350 degrees. I'm going to bake all of mine in my lower oven, so I'm going to use a convection bake setting for mine. If you don't have a convection bake setting on your oven, totally fine. You can do a regular bake setting. The important thing is the 350 degree Fahrenheit. So we're going to start by working on our wet ingredients. We'll start with some butter. This recipe calls for 2/3 of a cup of butter. So one full stick is 1/3 cup plus some excess. So we're going to go into a second stick to make that 2/3 cup. So if you're looking at the measurements on the side of the butter, 5 1/3 teaspoon is that 1/3 cup. So we need to add an additional bit to that. So it's 10 2/3 teaspoons all together. So 8 teaspoons here. I'm gonna do another 2 full teaspoons and 2/3 on that. So I have a knife here handy. I'm gonna go ahead and cut into this second stick of butter. So I just have the tiniest little bit in reserve for another project on another day. And I like to cheat a little bit, and I didn't pull my butter out ahead of time to soften it, so we're going to go ahead and get it melted in the microwave. So I'm going to cut it into some more manageable chunks so it will melt quicker. And you can do the same thing following along at home. So I'm just using the wax paper that it comes in as my balancing board. So that will just kind of help things melt a little easier. All right, and we're going to go ahead and cover this glass bowl. I put that butter in a microwave safe glass bowl. Yours doesn't have to be glass, but it does have to be microwave safe. So I'm going to pop that in my microwave. I have a nice reusable cover that I use. Butter, when you're microwaving it, will splatter. So we're going to hit this for about 40 seconds. It won't be fully melted. It'll just be soft enough and enough melted that I can go ahead and work with it. While that's going, we can go ahead and measure our sugar. So this recipe calls for 1 1/3 cup of sugar. I happen to have these measuring cups. This one is a 2 cup total, and up the side it shows me 1 cup and 1 1/3 cup. If you don't have one that goes up or works like this, you can use, smaller singular pre-portion one full, and then a smaller 1/3. All good. So let's go ahead and pour this sugar in here. I really love these measuring cups because you can see right when you've got your sugar up to the level. Although with baking, you can be close and it will still be fine. All right. So 30 seconds, you'll see that some of the butter is totally melted, and then some of the butter is still just in those chunks, but they're really soft, so they're going to be easy to work with. So let's go ahead and put our cover off to the side and pour our sugar in with that butter. And those of you who have baked with me before know I'm a big fan of just a sturdy fork to make things happen together. So we're just going to go ahead and mix that sugar and that butter together. All right. That's got a good start. So to that, we're gonna go ahead and add 2 eggs. And you can see I'm just using the side of my counter to break the shell, and then I peel it open. And that, I didn't get it quite good enough, so sometimes you gotta go back in there a second time and try and keep that shell out. So I'm gonna go ahead and wash my hands. Anytime you're handling raw egg and it gets on your fingers, always a good idea to re-wash your hands. Okay, very good. Egg is off the hands now. So let's go ahead and get these eggs combined in here with our butter and our sugar. This recipe came from a really good friend of mine in the neighborhood, and I make it all the time. Maybe I should bring her one of the muffins with a little note. Leave it on her doorstep. Okay, so now it's time to add our bananas, and you want to use ripe bananas. Now you are probably wondering what on earth is going on with these bananas. When I have bananas that are too ripe for my family to eat, I go ahead and I pop them right in the freezer. So I pulled these out a couple of hours ago so that they could soften a little bit. They are still perfectly delicious. I wouldn't want to eat them whole, but they're going to be wonderful in this banana bread. So I'm just cutting off the end of the stem, and they are going to look yucky when I open them up. So if you have bananas that are just still palatable to eat, totally fine, but you definitely want them ripe. My other options, they just weren't quite ripe enough. I had some green bananas. Could use it in a pinch, but it's better when you have like ripe bananas. All right, so again, this was previously frozen, and it's just that banana mush that I'm putting in there. So there's the one. Daughter, who is filming for us, likes to peel the bananas and just freeze them without their peel, which would be a good idea. Maybe I'll start using that. She likes bananas in her smoothie. Now, if I were using not really mushy bananas, if I were going for something that was still something that my family might eat, I would use a potato masher to mash that in. But this is really just so runny that my fork is going to do the trick. So I'm going to save this from the dishwasher and put it back with my tools. If you need it, use it. And if you don't have one, a fork will work fine. You can just kind of mash that banana up against the side of your bowl to break it up, and then get it stirred in really well with your butter, sugar, egg mixture. Again, those previously frozen, thawed, soupy bananas work really well in banana bread because they just literally fall apart in here. Okay, so that was hardly any work at all. You guys are probably still mashing yours up a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this plate. Okay, so that's all of my wet ingredients for right now. There's a PS step at the end that's wet. So now it's time to tackle our dry ingredients. I'm going to use a separate bowl because I want to mix in well the salt, the baking soda, and the baking powder with the flour. I will tell you, sometimes when I'm trying to save dishes, I'll just throw it on top of the wet ingredients and mix it in. It's okay, but my instructions to you called for a separate bowl, so that's what we'll go with. So this calls for 2 full and then 3/4 of flour. So I'm going to go ahead and use my 2 cup again. And I just filled up my flour container, so it is actually a little over full. All right, so we're going to shake that up. So that is 2 full cups there. Oops, I almost did my trick and put it in right into the wet ingredients. And then we just need a 3/4 cup to top that off. Okay, so I'm gonna shake this and see where I am here. Not quite, need a little bit more flour. All right, so that's at that 3/4 line. So go ahead and toss that in. All right, put this top back on here. Great. Okay, so now we're gonna go ahead and add our baking soda and our baking powder. It is 1 teaspoon each of these 2 ingredients. Kind of sprinkle the teaspoon of that baking powder on the top. And then I'm going to get my teaspoon of baking soda and sprinkle that on top there. And then it calls for a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. So I've already got this out. I'm just going to guesstimate here and fill it about halfway with the salt. I've got another fork out here, so I'm just going to take the fork, the dry fork, and mix those dry ingredients together. All right, so now it's time to go ahead and top the wet ingredients and with the dry. Rubber spoon to help with this process. Let no butter be wasted. All right. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and rest this here because I am going to use it again in a minute when we go to fill our muffin tins. All right. So I'm just kind of combining this gently, trying not to flip that flour up over the sides of my bowl. Okay. All right, now you're going to see that there's still a little bit of flour. It hasn't quite combined, and it looks kind of thick. It is a thick batter, which is fine, good for muffins. But we're going to make it a little bit more moist by adding some sour cream. That's that final PS wet ingredient that I was telling you about earlier. 1/2 cup of sour cream. If you don't happen to have sour cream at home, yogurt is a great substitution. Greek yogurt is perfect, but I've even in a pinch used just flavored Yoplait, and it's totally fine. So I'm at the end of 1 carton of cream here. We use a lot of sour cream in our household. We like it on potatoes, enchiladas, all sorts of other good stuff. All right, so that is pretty much done for. Let me open a new one. So we almost always have sour cream in the house, but again, I've been caught off guard here or there and had to go the yogurt route, which works great. This is really just adding a moisture element. I promise your muffins are not going to taste like sour cream. Not everybody likes the taste of it. It's it's really just a consistency thing. Okay. Let's go ahead and get this completely mixed in. Setting up all my supplies that I neglected to grab the chocolate chips, but my husband, who is taller than me, just walked into the kitchen, so he's going to be a deer and pull me down my bag of chocolate chips. Thank you. All right. Family affair here. Daughter filming, husband passing chocolate chips. We're all good. All right, so I just want to get this sour cream fully combined. It is a really thick batter, so I'm getting a little bit of a bicep workout here too this evening. All right, so this is where that rubber spoon is going to come in handy again. I'm going to go ahead and just scrape off the mixing stuff there, and then scrape off my fork, as we are done with that. Okay. All right, so now we are ready to line some muffin tins. Again, I mentioned I was choosing to do muffins. I prefer to do it that way. They bake quicker. They are easier to share. My family is not going to eat all of the muffins that this is going to make. So this way we can send some to some neighbors or some friends. Sharing is good. So I am just lining all of my muffin tins. If you are choosing to do loaves, this makes 2 loaves. You are going to, while I'm doing this, you should be greasing your loaf pans. You can either do that with Pam, or you can use a little bit of margarine and just use a little bit of piece of saran wrap or a little plastic bag and rub the sides down, just to be able to grease the sides of your pans so your bread will come out nice and easy. That feels like 2. That is 2. Okay. All right. Now my experience with this recipe is it makes over 24 muffins. Just depends on how generous my pours are. So I'm going to go ahead and line 28 for right now, but I'm going to keep those last few handy in case I find that I have more and can do a full 30 muffins. All right, some members of my family prefer just plain banana bread. So I generally take about 1/3 to 1/2 and just do it plain in the muffin tins, and then I add my chocolate chips and do the rest with chocolate chips. So it looks like when I'm looking at this, just to make it easier, I have more pink than I have anything else, so I think anything that's not pink I'm going to make plain, and then I'm going to do the chocolate chips in the pink ones. All right, so I am just spooning out about a spoonful of dough into each of these, filling it about a little less than half the way. You don't want to fill it all the way up. They will rise when baking. And remember, I'm skipping the pink, so I'm going to come back and put chocolate chips in those. here for these last 3 non-pink ones. All right, that should be perfect for the people in my family that prefer a plain muffin. Okay, so now I am ready for some chocolate chips. I love chocolate chips, so I buy these big old bags from Costco. I guess you could measure. I make these all the time, so I just kind of dump some chips in them, stir it up, and if it looks like about the right amount of chocolate chips, then we're good. And if it doesn't look chippy enough, then I add some more. Okay, so that, I'm happy with that. That's plenty of chips. Every muffin should have quite a few chocolate chips in it, so I'm gonna call it A-okay. So we're coming back here with all our pink liners and getting that chocolate chip dough in them. All right. So those of you who were with me for virtual baking, I am almost done with our cookbook with all of the recipes that we did during our time together and the ones that you suggested, and I will be sharing that, I hope, with everyone very soon. So those of you who are joining me for the first time for this special activity, as well as those of you who were with me all spring for virtual baking. I'm excited about it. I was looking through your recipes this weekend when I was putting together the cookbook, and they sound delicious. So I will be trying some myself over the summer and hope you will take advantage of each other's recipes and enjoy some yummy goodness all summer long. Ooh, that one has quite a bit of chips in it. So I think I'm gonna have enough for those 2 extras that I was unsure about. I will have lots of muffins to share, but whoops, I am out of pink ones. So these last 2 are gonna have chocolate chips in blue muffin liners, and it is gonna be fine. I'll just eat those first. A little extra batter in here. So I'm going to kind of eyeball and see if any of them look a little lower than others. I really don't like to waste batter, so I'll just top off a couple of the ones that I think look a little light. Very good. All right, now if you are making loaves, the loaves need about 40 to 45 minutes in the oven. The cupcakes or muffins rather, I check them at 20 minutes. I usually find 20, 23 minutes is about good for them. And again, remember, I have a convection setting, so I happen to do that so that it'll cook all around my trays here. So I'm going to put the one on the the top, another big one on the bottom. I'm also, that top one, since it's kind of in there deep, I'm gonna flip it halfway. Actually, I'm gonna flip the bottom one as well. So I'm gonna set my timer for 10 minutes, and in 10 minutes, I'm gonna flip them, give them another 10 minutes, and then I'm going to check them. Those of you who are with me for virtual baking all spring, you know the trick is to get yourself a skewer or a fork or a toothpick, and how you know a baked good is done is you press it into your baked good. If it comes out clean, then it's good. If it's still doughy, if there's wet dough sticking to that skewer, you know it needs more time. How much more time? That comes with experience. Usually if it's really doughy, I'll give it another 5 minutes. If it's just a little bit, then maybe just another 2 to 3 minutes. But you want to be careful not to overcook. So better to check it frequently and pull it out just right than to think, oh, I'm sure it needs another 7 minutes and then have overdone muffins, because that's not very tasty. So now that we've got this in, I'm going to go ahead and sign off the video, and thank you for baking with me.